Hi, I'm Dawn Kenton and I specialise in helping sales teams improve their results through getting better at what they do. Today I want to share with you a really great model for understanding how rapport and trust are built. Both of those things incredibly important in a sales role, but really vital in any job, whether you're customer facing, whether you're working with colleagues, whether you're trying to build personal relationships, networking. Being able to confidently build trust and rapport are vital in most roles. So I'm going to go through with you the 5 stages that we naturally and normally go through when we effectively build rapport and a trusting relationship, so that you can identify, okay, so what is it I'm doing at the moment that fits in with that, and can I sort of codify and pin down what's working really well for me, and also to think about, are there any opportunities for me to consider changing my approach or adapting my approach, or if I reflect back on perhaps when conversations haven't gone so well, could I reflect on this model, and does that help explain perhaps why and where that fell down a little? So I'm going to go through those stages. I'm sure you're going to find it really useful in whatever role it is you do. The examples that I share with you will be more sales focused, but I will weave in some other examples as well to make it relevant to you. Here we go. So the idea behind this model, it's represented as a triangle, that there are stages that we go through when we communicate, and that we will have different levels of communication. So for some people, we might be quite high up on this pyramid in terms of the way that we communicate. For others, we might be quite low down on that pyramid. And it's really about understanding how we navigate from one level to the next and what's going on there, both for us and the person that we are communicating with. So if we have a look at the pyramid or the triangle, you'll see that at the bottom level of the communication triangle, we have what's called ritual and routine communication, sometimes called cliche and routine. And this is the type of communication that you could engage with anybody in. So it could be somebody that you pass by in the corridor at work that maybe works in a different department. It could be maybe somebody who you pass on a walk, or somebody in the street or at the shop or waiting for a tube. So it's that real sort of basic ritual level of communication. It will be that, good morning, how are you? I'm fine, thanks, how are you? So you don't really need to know the person just to say hello, good morning. So that's the most basic, if you like, entry level to communication. Even if we know somebody really well, as soon as we see them or if we phone them, we will normally start off with, hi, how are you? That will still be our entry level into the conversation. So regardless of what level we can get to with that person and how high we go up the pyramid with that person, we will still normally naturally go through each of these stages. So the next level up on the communication triangle is called gossip and fact, or sometimes called information and fact. And this is where we're really trying to establish some common ground with that person, particularly if we haven't met them before. And I see this happen beautifully when I'm running maybe a selection event or a training session where people don't know each other, or a networking event where people don't know each other. And I stand back and observe them, stand together, perhaps grab a cup of tea, and then the conversation naturally flows to starting to explore common ground. So it could be, where have you travelled from today? Or what do you do for a living? And the second that they find that they have some commonality, some common ground, oh, I used to work there, or I don't live too far from there, whereabouts exactly do you live? So that's when the barriers start to go down. You can see people's shoulders relax, and you can see that rapport starting to build. Commonality builds rapport. So as human beings, we naturally search for that commonality. We are naturally seeking things that we have in common. So as a salesperson, if you are particularly making new business calls, what you want to try and do is to establish as many opportunities before you make contact for commonality as you possibly can, because that's going to really help you build rapport and trust and bring those barriers down during that conversation. Now, clearly, we're not going to be asking personal questions to try and establish that commonality necessarily. You might perhaps do during a networking event, but if you're making an unsolicited new business call, then I wouldn't advise that. But what you can do is that you can find out as much as you possibly can about that potential customer's business, if it's business to business sales that you're in, so that you can demonstrate that although they don't know you, they might have heard of your company, but they don't necessarily know you, that you have some commonality and that you both have an understanding of their business. So if you're able to say, I'm aware of the fact that you specialise in providing e-learning solutions, then that's going to start to bring those natural barriers that potential customers might have when being approached by somebody that they don't know. It used to be called cold calling, didn't it? Because it was, it felt very cold. Well, actually, if you can establish as much information as possible prior to that conversation, you give yourself a really good chance of being able to build rapport by being able to explore those areas of commonality and demonstrate what it is that you know about that customer's business. So that's the first real tip, if you like, for those of you who are in a sales role. It's about thinking whether that's an existing customer or a potential new customer. It's not forget about our existing customers. To be able to demonstrate to that person that you know something about their circumstance or their business is really going to bring those barriers down. So even if you're phoning a contact centre and the person that answers that call, once they've taken, maybe some security details, acknowledges, oh, okay, I can see Mrs. Kenton, you've been a customer with us for 15 years. That just makes me feel as though I'm not talking to a stranger, I'm talking to somebody who knows something about me. And that really smooths and helps ease that communication from that point forward. If we consider the downside, if you like, or when things might go a little bit wrong, even at that very early stage when it comes to communication and building rapport, we've got to, as salespeople, be really mindful of not making assumptions. We really have to put the work in to understand as much as we possibly can about if it's an existing customer, their history with us, if it's a prospect, then their business. Because if we skip that stage, then we are potentially going to damage rapport quite quickly. An example I can give you of this was I was listening into some sales calls for a business I was working in, and the salesperson was calling and they hadn't done their pre-call research because they just wanted to whiz through the calls. So they just saw a company name on a sheet, dialed the number without really thinking and started to wing it. And their opening was, oh, hi, it's X calling from X organisation. I am aware of the fact that you sell security systems. And the prospect flatly and very coldly said, no, we don't. And there was a long and very painful silence when the salesperson then sort of recovered and said, oh, right, okay, it's just that you're called A&B Security, so I thought you sold security systems. And the customer or the prospect responded, well, we don't. And those sort of cringy tumbleweed moments that you're just glad it's not you. And the salesperson, never recovered from that. They desperately tried during that conversation, but it didn't last much longer. And it really ended with the prospect sort of suggesting to the salesperson that they perhaps spent a little bit more time finding out about who they were calling before they picked up the phone, before, quite quickly ending the conversation. So if we make assumptions, then that can be really dangerous and really damaging to that real fragile rapport at that stage. The next level up is what's called ideas and judgment. So as we go up the pyramid, as we go through these stages, what's happening is that we are gradually increasing our level of personal disclosure. So we are gradually becoming a little bit more open with the person that we're talking to, okay? So at the ideas and judgment level, we are sharing our personal view or our personal opinion. So that's different, isn't it, from that ritual and routine or that gossip and fact type communication, which is relatively low risk. You know, I've talked about the risk of making an assumption. You know, that's the biggest risk really that you get at that point is that you completely get it wrong. But as we enter into the higher levels of communication, then there is a lot more at stake. And the risk that we take when we share our personal view or our personal opinion is that somebody disagrees with that personal view or that personal opinion. So if you are talking to somebody that you know really well, then that's okay, because if they don't share that personal view or that personal opinion about a particular situation or scenario or person, for example, then your relationship will carry you through and you'll have a discussion and maybe a bit of a debate about that, and you'll either agree to disagree or one of you will talk the other one round, to their way of thinking. When you don't know somebody well and you're trying to build a relationship with them, to share your personal view or your personal opinion either too early or too forcefully can be really damaging to rapport. So I went on a breakfast briefing a while back, and there was a guy that turned up. He was a little bit late for the sort of immediate sort of tea and coffees that you have. So he was grabbing himself a cup of tea, and I happened to be stood next to him. And he looked a little bit flustered. So I said, hi, how are you? You okay? And he said, oh, I'm having a terrible morning this morning. I got out of the house and the tyre was flat, so I had to order a taxi because I really didn't want to miss this, and all the way here I've had to listen to the Chris Evans breakfast show, and I can't stand that man, and I can't believe anybody listens to him. You know, he just talks utter rubbish. It was really painful to listen to. So that's an example of somebody sharing quite quickly their personal view or their personal opinion. And it's a personal view and a personal opinion that I didn't agree with. But I didn't have a relationship with him. I didn't know him. It's the first time I've met him. Am I going to argue about the virtues of the Chris Evans breakfast show with a stranger? No, I'm not. But what I'm going to think is, this guy's quite opinionated. He seems quite judgmental. So, we might end up in little discussion groups. So what I think I'm going to do is try and grab my cup of tea as quickly as possible and sit myself as far away from him as I can, because I don't think I'm going to enjoy having to work with him in a group exercise. So you can see how sharing your personal view or your personal opinion too soon or too forcefully or inappropriately can be really damaging when you are trying to build rapport. If you think about it in a dating scenario, if you ask somebody about their taste in music and, then you trample all over, that genre or that choice, you like country, oh my God, it's awful, it's painful to listen to, then that's not going to be great, is it? And I'm not suggesting for a moment that we pretend to like, what everybody else likes, but there is a better way of articulating that, isn't there? There's a way of saying, oh, right, okay, it's not something I've really ever been into. Who are your favourite artists? What got you into that type of music? Who got you into that type of music? So that you then get them to open up and explore and learn more about them, and that's how relationships blossom. If we think about ideas and judgment in a sales scenario, so this is about really being mindful that we don't want to be sharing our personal views or our personal opinions with that potential customer or existing customer too quickly, too forcefully, too soon. And in sales, I think that's sometimes why salespeople get such a bad rep, because it is this feeling that they are forcing their opinion about what's right for you and what's best for you, particularly in those sort of pitch style sales conversations. That's exactly what they're doing. They're phoning up and saying, hi, this product's going to be amazing for you. Don't know you, don't know much about your business, not bothered to build any rapport, but I'm now going to launch headlong into ideas and judgment and tell you exactly why I think what I'm selling is going to be right for you. So you can see how in a more consultative sales approach, that is completely inappropriate. We need to use that ideas and judgment time and phase of the communication pyramid to really explore the existing or potential customers' ideas. You know, what do they feel is working best for them? What's important to them when making a choice about that particular product or that particular service? Because then what we can do is match what it is that our product does to what it is that they really feel is important and valuable. The penultimate level of the communication triangle is called feelings and emotions. So as we already established, as we go up the different levels of the communication pyramid, our level of risk increases, as does our level of personal disclosure. So how open and honest we're being. Now, at the feelings and emotions level, we are opening up not just in terms of what we think, but how we feel. So that's a very different level and type of communication, isn't it? And normally we would only share our feelings and emotions with people that we trust with those. And the risk that we take at that feelings and emotions level is not that somebody's going to disagree with us in the way that they might at the ideas and judgment level. You know, they can't say, for example, well, you don't feel worried, or you don't feel anxious, or you don't feel excited, because that would be a ridiculous thing to say. So they can't disagree with it. But what they might do is they might judge us for having that feeling or emotion. In a sales scenario, I think it's incredibly important that your customers are able to articulate their feelings and emotions about the solution that you're talking to them about, because sometimes that can be the blocker between people saying, you know, yes, I'm going to go ahead and do that thing, or just procrastinating, and you know that sale just doesn't seem to be moving forward, but you can't understand the reason why. You know, I went out to see a marketing manager when I was selling advertising, and we put together an amazing campaign. You know, we put together all the stats, all the data, all the information about target audience and how we could reach those potential customers for her business. And you know, and she absolutely, you know, loved it. She said it makes complete sense. You know, I can really see how this could work. But you know, a week later, we were having the same sort of Groundhog Day conversation, and she kept articulating how it made sense. You know, ideas and judgment, and you know, completely on board with it, but just couldn't seem to make that commitment to go ahead. And when I sort of asked her, you know, how do you feel about starting this, you know, in the next week or so, she said, well, a little bit apprehensive, if I'm honest. I know it makes sense, and I can see that this is a really well thought through campaign, but you know, I'm relatively new here. This is a big percentage of the owner's budget for marketing this year, and I'm just really super conscious that I don't want to get this wrong. I don't want to make a mistake, and I'm really anxious about that. So that was the key. That question was the key to unlocking, you know, those concerns. And rather than just go back through all the reasons why, you know, the proposal and the presentation was a good one, because she knew all of that, she understood that. It was a case of saying, I completely understand, you know, that's absolutely natural and normal, and I would feel exactly the same as you if I were in your shoes. You know, there's a lot at stake, and it feels like, you know, a really big, significant decision. You know, I want to reassure you that none of this is set in stone. You know, if we get a month into it, when we're sat down and we're having our campaign review conversation, and we find that we're getting really good results from one area, and you know, maybe not so much from another, then we can change tack, we can move, we can adapt, we can alter the campaign to really make sure that it focuses on the things that are delivering you the results that you need. So we'll review that, you know, every month and every quarter to make sure that this campaign is delivering for you. And that was all she needed to hear. She just needed a little bit of reassurance. But I wouldn't have known how to reassure her had I not have understood what her concerns were. So in a sales scenario, you know, emotions account for a big part of the decision-making process. So even if something logically makes sense, there is still the emotions to consider. And if you as a salesperson aren't able to build trust so that potential customers feel comfortable articulating those concerns or those worries with you, then that is going to limit your ability to move forward with those deals. The final stage of the communication triangle, the pinnacle of communication, is what we call peak communication. So this is really when you are able to share your ideas, your opinions, your feelings, your emotions. But the key difference is you'll feel able to do that without the fear of being judged. That risk is taken away. So if you think about the people that you have really close relationships with, so it might be a partner, it might be your boss, it might be a work colleague, it might be a friend, a family member, who you are at peak communication with, that means you can pretty much tell them anything, and you know that they are not going to judge you for that. They're not going to pounce all over, your ideas or your judgments or your feelings or your emotions. So in a working scenario, I was fortunate enough to have a really great manager when I first went into a role where I was working more remotely. And what she did was spent the first few weeks really working on making sure that we were able to communicate with each other very openly and very honestly from the offset, because we were going to be working remotely. And what she said to me quite rightly, and for those of you that perhaps manage people who work remotely, is I don't have those non-verbal clues. I don't have the look in your eye when I'm asking you to do something. I'm speaking to you over the telephone and all I've got is your voice. So I need to know that if you're telling me that you're fine and you feel comfortable with something, that you're being open and honest with me. I need you to feel as though, I need you to know it's okay to say, I'm worried about this, I'm concerned about this, I'm excited about this, whatever that is. I'm not going to judge you for that. I just want to help you through it. So it was really a really productive working relationship. And if you can get to that stage with the people that you work with, and if your customers feel as though they are at peak communication with you, not all of the time, of course, that'd be exhausting, but when they need to, they can really, go there and say, I feel disappointed in the product or service, or I'm a little bit worried about how this is going, or I wanted to tell you how pleased I am and how thrilled I am with how this is going. Then they are those real business partner relationships, and there's a real bottom line benefit of being able to communicate with your customers in that way and at that level when it's needed. It really cuts to the heart of the matter, and it means that you can move forward. They trust you, you trust them, and that takes away, a lot of the sort of negative feelings that are associated with sales, and it means that you can just focus purely on doing the right thing for them and their business. I hope you found that useful. I think it's a really fascinating model, and it can be applied in so many different scenarios. If you think about your relationships with your colleagues, with your boss, with your employees, the network that you have, I think you can see how it can be applied in so many different scenarios. But I'd love to hear how you think this can help you, and how you can put maybe what we've talked about into practice, or examples of when you've done something that's worked really, really well, or perhaps when you've heard somebody else do something that perhaps damages rapport, and where that fit in the communication pyramid. I'm going to be doing weekly videos for sales people and sales managers to look at tools and techniques and tips that have really helped me as a sales professional throughout the years. And so please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to be kept up to date with those. Thanks again for listening. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.